Hi, you guys. My name is Gabriela Torres, and I'm so glad to be in this class with you all. This is my show and tell presentation. A few things you might know about me already from my posts. I'm an English major. I love reading, and I have a real bond with my books and with the audiobooks that I love. As a child, I attended Catholic schools from age 4 to age 17. So I was not only raised with a Christian upbringing at home, but part of my indoctrination happened every day at school. We learned about Catholicism and Christianity every day. In high school, we chose theology electives too. I remember Christian history, and I took a course on death and dying. In 7th grade, we learned Latin and Greek so that we could read from the Vulgate and sing Gregorian chant so that we could be as close to the actual text of Christ as possible. In my Catholic school career, I've had upwards of 20 theology teachers who all taught Christ with entirely different ideas and agendas, and that's not including all the priests whose homilies I've heard over the years. I now consider myself non-religious, but perhaps culturally Catholic, if that makes sense, specifically Mexican American Catholic. Part of what we've been learning in this class includes unlearning aspects of theology to better understand faith in a truer way. I think my closeness to Catholicism from such a young age and my childhood distrust for authority figures, with those things, I've come to conclude it's okay to have questions and to be a contrarian, and it's okay to be unsure. And as of right now, I consider myself non-religious. But I mentioned this idea of culturally Catholic because there are certain aspects and traditions of my Catholic upbringing I've chosen to maintain and keep sacred in a weird way. There is a crucifix in every room in my house. I collect idolatry of Mary, especially statues of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I remember and keep sacred the stories of a lot of saints. I have a favorite saint. His name is Saint Maximilian Kolbe. He's a martyr and the patron saint of journalists, drug addicts, and the imprisoned. If you ever want to become obsessed with one particular saint, he's my fave. With all that being said, for my show and tell presentation, I wanted to show you all some books I've read over the years that grew with me and impacted my understanding of faith and Christianity. Some of them were assigned books from school, but all of them pushed me to think about how I know or how I know theology. The first book I have is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I'm sure this was assigned reading for a lot of us in high school. I read this during my freshman year English class with Mr. Donnarumma. He sports a handlebar mustache and is still one of the best teachers I've ever had. Here is my 9th grade handwriting. It says Gabriela Torres, 9th grade. That year I wrote a paper on the character Simon and his role as a Christ figure in the book. Simon maintains this pure moral code. He often walks alone from the group to meditate and talk to himself, and he is tempted by the Lord of the Flies and is eventually killed and dismembered by all the boys on the island, including even the good boys who were his friends. Even the title, Lord of the Flies, references an English translation of Beelzebub, which is sometimes another name for the devil. With that being said, this book is not perfect. It echoes certain ideas that associate white English masculinity as both the cause of and solution to all of humanity's problems and fears. Lord of the Flies. My next book is Life of Pi by Yann Martel. If you're not familiar with the story, it's about a boy named Pi Patel whose family owns a zoo in India. Pi practices his native Hinduism, but finds himself also practicing Islam and Christianity. And he does this simply because he loves God so much and he sees the benefits of each religion. And it's not this need to be right, so he picks all three. It's just that he really loves all three of them. When his family decides to sell their zoo and move to North America with their animals, the freighter ship they're traveling on crashes and sinks. And Pi finds himself sharing a teeny lifeboat with a hyena, a zebra, an orangutan named Orange Juice, and a 450-pound Bengal tiger named Richard Parker. Hijinks ensue. Yada yada. Pi stays on the lifeboat for an incredibly long time. This was a summer reading book assigned before my sophomore year of high school. This book taught me a lot about the nature in which we tell stories, especially trauma narratives. We were taught a lot about allegory and narrative distance with this book and used those lessons to parallel this book with the Bible, because of course we did. But this book asks its reader to consider the relativity of truth and how two different stories of the same instance can both be true. And to Pi, all three of the religions are absolutely true. Life of Pi. My next book is The Death of Innocence by Sister Helen Prejean. She is also the author of Dead Man Walking, which was adapted into a movie. I own that book too, but I let my sister borrow it and she never gave it back. Both books are nonfiction and they detail Sister Helen's work on prison reform, specifically her work against the death penalty. This book is part memoir and part dismantling of all the legal and religious justifications for the death penalty in the United States. Its discourse is a little outdated because this book was released in 2004. My senior year of high school, our school's theater program put on a production of the play version of Dead Man Walking. Because Catholicism, we even watched the film in my Death and Dying course. Our school's student cabinet invited Sister Helen to speak at our high school and to attend the play. To our surprise, she showed up. She signed both of my books and I took a selfie with her. There it is. My copy of Dead Man Walking has a note that says, "To Gabby, choose life!" These books influenced and grew with me on my journey with Catholicism, specifically in high school, and they were important to me at the time and helped me with my theological thinking. I don't carry them with me emotionally as much anymore. I think it's mostly because, as important as these lessons were for me at the time, I didn't see myself in these stories. And as self-centered as that sounds, reading a book in which you connect with the character in a way that grounds you, for me, is the difference between a book that I really liked and a book that I live. I think that makes sense. Two books that I carry with me and are also influenced by Christianity, but they do the work in telling stories about the oppressed and how in their moments of agency they become gods in a way. But there are two books and I wanted to just mention them, but I'm not going to talk much about them. This one is Under the Feet of Jesus by Helena Maria Viramontes. This one is Just Kids by Patti Smith. And I thought about going more in depth with these two and how Christianity and learning certain aspects of obedience and theology as children affect you as a person. And I just think the ways in which Christianity and theology influenced these books were just more subtle and a little harder to explain, but they're also deeply felt by me. So I had to at least mention them. If you decide to read any of the books that I've mentioned, read these two. And if you do decide to read them, don't look me in the eye for a month or else we'll be too close. Thank you guys for watching. I'm super glad you stuck around for the whole thing, and I will see you all in the discussion post. Bye.